Brian. He is just doing a spectacular job, and he puts all these together, and it's so amazing. He's brought such a great audience. You guys are amazing. You've made it this far on a grief night. I mean, you guys deserve your own round of applause for coming out for a grief night. I don't know if you're a masochist or what it is, but give yourselves a round of applause. You're amazing. So I want to tell you guys that if I'm having a really bad day, I like to look at my phone and I like to check this app, and it's the Disneyland Ride Wait Time app. And I will look at that app and I will envision myself in Disneyland. Because Disneyland is truly my happy place. Right? As far as I'm concerned, Disneyland is the happiest place on earth. I love it. I love it. And when I moved from Canada to Australia, actually 2 years ago today is when we arrived. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Brian. When we moved, I promised my children a trip to Disneyland on the way because I truly felt like that was a good compensation for leaving all of their friends behind. That's how much I love Disneyland, right? And when we arrived, you get to have all this buffet breakfast, right? Like we stayed in the Disneyland hotel and we get to have this buffet breakfast every morning. I really like breakfast. And I really like it, so I'm going to tell you about it. I had 3 eggs Benedicts every morning, and that's not a lie. I like Disneyland. And I had a lot of sausages, and there were waffles, and there were pancakes, and I could have all of them, and then Goofy would come out, and he'd be like, ooh, and I'd be like, yes! It was the best! I love Disneyland, right? Disneyland is the happiest place on earth because everyone is so nice. They're so nice. They're just happily like running these rides. It's a horrible place to work, I imagine. But they're so happy you never know it, right? It's so great. It's so wonderful to be in a place, and especially like in the world nowadays, right? It's wonderful to be in a place where everybody's just fucking happy. That means I can be happy, right? And like they're happy even when you don't deserve it, right? Like we were riding this ride. The ride is, has anyone been to Disneyland? Give me a woo. Woo! Okay, great. Okay, so if you guys been on this ride, it's the Indiana Jones ride. It's a new ride, and it's super fun. And you stand in line for 45 minutes, don't fucking care, totally worth it, right? Because you get on the ride, and it's like all enclosed, and you're like, and it's all really cool, and there's like temple, like theme, and you get on the Jeep with a whole bunch of people, and then the Jeep starts shaking, and then there's snakes coming from the ceiling, and then there's like a ball coming towards you, oh no, but you drop in the floor. It's the best. It's the best, right? And we get off this ride, and we're so happy, and my husband turns to me, and he's like, oh shit, I lost our bag, right? And this bag, I have to explain this to you guys. When you move overseas and you watch your entire life leave in a 20-foot by 20-foot container, and you just watch it and hope that it shows up on the other side of the planet, you care about the shit in your bag, right? You care so much about that stuff. And you especially care about it when it's all of your passports and all the money you will ever have, right? And my husband had just lost it. He just lost it. And I was devastated, right? And I was terrified. And I go up to this kid who's running the ride, and as I walk up to him, I see there's this huge sign in huge font behind him that says, please secure your bags. They will fall out in the ride. And I looked down at the 45-minute line that we stood in and realized there are signs fucking everywhere that say, please secure your bag. They will fall off in the ride. And I had to go up to this kid and say, I did not secure my bag. And it did fall off in the ride. And this kid, does he say to me, where's your brain? Like, did you not look at the goddamn signs? No, he doesn't say that. He doesn't even call me ma'am, right? Which is a terrible thing to call someone. I hate it. He didn't even call me ma'am. He just said, no problem, and he turned off the ride for an hour.
What?
For an hour. People were standing in line for 45 minutes. They were about to get in the Jeep. Not Jasmine lost her fucking bag. Get off the ride and wait an hour. So you can imagine the amount of shit that this guy had to take for getting this bag, right? And he hands me this bag and he goes, not a problem. Walks away. Happiest fucking place on earth! Even when you don't deserve it at all! Right? Are we getting that I like Disneyland? Is that coming through? Okay, great. So I love Disneyland. We've been here 2 years, as I said. Earlier in March this year, I get a phone call from my best friend in Canada. Her husband has died. It was a heart attack. He just stood up at work and died. It was devastating and upsetting because I'm her best friend, but we raised our kids together, and our kids are best friends. And the most devastating thing about moving was moving my, at the time, 11-year-old son, who was best friends with her 11-year-old daughter. They were just, think Jenny and Forrest from Forrest Gump, right? Like, they were peas and carrots, you know what I mean? Like, they just loved each other so much. And I felt devastated that my son was not there for her daughter during this time. On top of that, my mom had a brain virus, which sounds like only something on Grey's Anatomy or some shit, but she had a brain virus, and it caused her, it was very serious, and she was gonna die or not, and it was very upsetting. The problem is that I don't speak to her partner. Her partner is a very bad person, and I don't want to get into it. That's a whole other story you can listen to on Now Hear This, ABC Radio, if you're so inclined. But he's a very bad person, trust me, and I haven't spoken to him in 10 years. And so I knew that I was going to have to go back to Canada. I was going to have to be there for my best friend, and also find a way to maneuver my family situation with this man who I absolutely despise. But now he's the only person I can speak to because he is my mom's advocate. He's doing a shit job, but he's my mom's advocate, and so I'm going to have to deal with this guy. And so I say to myself, okay, I'm going to do this. And I know that there's a 12-hour wait on my way home in LA. Going to fucking Disneyland. This one's going to Disneyland, right? It's going to be a prize at the end of this. I'm going to treat myself with Disneyland. I'm going to cry on Pirates of the Caribbean. It's fine. And that was what that thought got me through this 2 weeks of horror. It was devastating because I had to turn off all emotion. It was not about me. Any of these situations were not about me, and so I was just there for everyone else. Every time, I saw my best friend's kids, who were kind of my kids, just look that robot-y look that comes from grief, not in being a child and not knowing how to deal with it. Every time my mom's partner insisted on hugging me, and talking to me, every time his voice started, I would just sing like, it's a small world, it's gonna be okay, Jasmine. You know, and in my head, I was rocking back and forth on Pirates of the Caribbean, just like yo-ho-ho and a bottle of fucking Valium. So that's what got me through these 2 weeks. And I get to the airport, I say my tearful goodbyes to my best friend, and for the first time in about 3 weeks, I have a feeling, because it was just so numb the whole time. It was just so, I was just in shock and just in survival mode. And so I have this feeling, and this feeling is a small amount of joy, because I'm going to get to go to Disneyland. And on top of it, I'm gonna get to go alone, right? Mama can go anywhere she wants. So I was so excited, and I hand my ticket to this lady in Canada. So it's Calgary, and I'm going to LA, and then LA is a 15-hour flight to Brisbane. And I'm handing my ticket to the lady in Calgary, and she's supposed to check me all the way through. And she turns to me and she says, oh, that's a bit weird. It doesn't look like you have a visa anymore to live in Australia. And I was like, there must be a mistake. And she was like, well, I can't really look at anything here. But I'll check you through to LA. You're a Canadian citizen. You're allowed to go to the US, but I can't check you through to Australia. So you're gonna have to wait for the Qantas desk to open in LA before you handle any of this, right? So I get to LA, and everything is closed in Australia. So I'm phoning the Canadian consulate, the Australian consulate in Canada, and just due to bureaucratic bullshit when it comes to visas, I had fucking deported myself when I left Australia. And I was fucked. And I wasn't gonna get to go home. And let me just point this out to you guys. My husband's Australian, right? My kids everyone they're Australian citizens. They're also Canadian citizens, but they're Australian. And so this is home. This is home to me. And I just spent a devastating 2 weeks, and I wasn't gonna get to just let it all go, and I was just freaking out, and I spent the next 12 hours talking to visa offices, just begging them to let me in, and ugly crying, and I discovered nobody wants to help an ugly crier. Oh. No, if I had a single tear glistening down my face, people would have been rushed oh my God, are you okay? But if you are snot running down your fucking face and your sleeve is crusty with it in the middle of LAX, they're just worried, They're not worried for you, they're worried for them, and they don't want to have anything to do with you. This woman in a kiosk with mobile phone providers, it was the only place where my Wi-Fi would work so I could talk to my husband, was right next to this kiosk. And she had to come up to me and be like, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to leave. The Wi-Fi is better over there, way over there, way over there. You're scaring people, right? So anyway, in all this, it was 8 hours of crying, and then I finally get a visitor visa, because I'm Canadian, I'm allowed this visitor visa. And my husband goes in Brisbane. I've recruited him to go to the actual visa office in Brisbane and plead for them, and he was where I'm arriving, surely they're gonna let me in. And the visa guy says to my husband, look, she will be allowed to get on the plane, she will be allowed to come into the country, but what's gonna happen is, because she is also a permanent resident, she's gonna be taken into a small room with some surgical gloves, and she's gonna have some splaining to do, right? And on top of that, they have every right to put her back on the plane and make her come back to Canada to wait until her visa comes. Did I mention it was a 15-hour flight from LA to Brisbane, and they were gonna turn me around and send me all the way back, right? So LA was spent just sobbing, crying. I get on the plane, everyone thinks I'm a meth addict because I'm just shaking and crying, right? And I get on the plane, and I get all the way over to Brisbane. I arrive in Brisbane Airport, and I'm just preparing myself. You are going to have to figure out a way to be on a plane for 15 hours and wait 2 weeks. You're going to have to figure it out, right? So I'm just sort of steeling myself for it, and I get to the customs desk, and it turns out they've got all these electronic kiosks now, right? And I'm like, oh shit, yay! I have a visa, I'll just click it, and I'll just be let in. Nobody will even ask me a question, right? So I go up, and I click it, and it fucking breaks. Breaks. And the lady says, no, you're gonna have to go stand in this line. And I get into this line, but it's a warren, it's a maze of all these ropes, and I don't understand, and I'm coming from the wrong way, and I'm going the wrong direction, and so I just duck under the line, and as I duck under the line, I hear a woman just screaming, this is an international airport! You can't do that! I'm like, oh fuck, I'm so deported, it's just, please stop yelling at me, And I get up to the front of the line, and the woman that I'm waiting to decide my fate turns, she finishes, the person in front of me, and she turns to her coworker and she says, I'm in the worst mood. I haven't had my coffee yet. Next! But I'm like, oh my God, and I just hand her my passport, and I'm just there this sad, shriveled, shrunken, crying, Ren and Stimpy, please don't do this to me. And she looks at me, and she stamps my passport, she hands it back to me, and she goes, next. She didn't even ask me a fucking question. I could have gone to Disneyland, you guys. I'm so angry that I didn't get to go to Disneyland. That's the end of my story. I'm just so pissed. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks so much, guys. One more time for Jasmine Fairbairn.